started. Welcome. So tonight I found a little show. About Jimmy Page when he bought Balkan House. And so Balkan House was owned by a fellow by the name of Aleister Crowley. So if you don't know who he is, he's literally the wickedest man in the world. And you're going to learn a little bit tonight. And you probably don't know this story. So this is the Led Zeppelin ghost story, but it's more of a demonic story. So why don't we get into it?
1970, at the absolute peak of Led Zeppelin's power, Jimmy Page did something that nobody in rock and roll had ever done before. He spent a significant portion of his fortune purchasing a decaying, remote manor house in the Scottish Highlands. Not a mansion in London, not an estate in Los Angeles. A crumbling, isolated property on the dark shores of Loch Ness, hundreds of miles from civilization, that had been abandoned by every single owner who had ever lived there. A house that locals refused to walk past after dark. A house where, according to documented accounts, an employee had tried to murder his own family. A house where a previous owner had shot himself dead in the bedroom. A house that the press had already called, by the time Page found it, the most notorious home in the Scottish Highlands. The house...
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. So here it is, Jimmy Page buying the Balkan House. And hello, how you doing there? He literally bought this house because of Aleister Crowley. And yeah, there's not much more I could tell you, so let's just get in. I'll pop on and make a couple little comments here and there because of fair use and all that kind of stuff. But I haven't seen this before, so it's just as much of a surprise to me as it is to you, or as it is to you all, to y'all, you all.
It's called Boleskine. If you're new here, this channel tells the real stories behind Led Zeppelin that nobody talked about. Subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. And the reason Jimmy Page bought it had nothing to do with music, nothing to do with fame, and nothing to do with Led Zeppelin. It had everything to do with a dead man named Aleister Crowley, a 600-year-old ritual involving the summoning of demons, and an obsession that Page had been carrying quietly since he was a teenager, reading books alone in his bedroom in Epsom, Surrey.
Okay, here's a little question for you guys. If magic isn't real and it's just a bunch of hocus pocus, why are there specific, exact instructions written down to be done on specific times, specific days, with specific substances, and in specific sexual positions? Can you answer me that?
Is the story that Led Zeppelin never told. The secret that Page kept for decades. The purchase that some people to this day believe changed everything that happened to the band afterward. The story of Boleskine House and what it says about the man who built the greatest rock and roll band in history. Jimmy Page.
Hey buddy, stop with your nonsense here. How's it going, Johnny? How's it going, Jesse? Thanks for popping in. We're doing the Led Zeppelin Boleskine House story tonight.
Born in 1944 in Heston, Middlesex, and grew up in Epsom, Surrey, in a modest family home at 34 Miles Road. From the outside, there was nothing remarkable about him. He was a quiet, studious child who discovered the guitar at around age 12 and became immediately, completely obsessed. By his mid-teens, He was already one of the most technically gifted young guitarists in England. And by the time he was 20, he was the most sought-after session musician in London, recording on hundreds of tracks for dozens of artists, building a
So some of those artists he recorded with were the Beatles, the Rolling Stones. You name some of the artists, and at that time Jimmy Page was recording with them. Like they said, he was a session musician, and he was some hot shit as a young session musician. He ripped it up.
For precision and instinct that few musicians of any age could match. But while other musicians his age were reading music...
You know it there, Yum Yum. You know it. We're starting class tonight, and you're fucking late.
...magazines and chasing girls, Jimmy Page was doing something else entirely in his spare time. He was reading Aleister Crowley. Aleister Crowley was born in 1875 in Warwickshire, England, into a wealthy family of strict Protestant fundamentalists. He rejected his upbringing completely, left Cambridge without a degree, and spent his adult life doing things that shocked everyone who encountered him. He was a mountaineer, a chess master, a poet, a painter, a drug user, a sexual provocateur, and above all...
Geez, sounds familiar there.
A ceremonial magician.
I know someone like that.
His own religion called Thelema, whose central law was the phrase he would spend his entire life repeating. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law.
Do what thou wilt.
The British tabloid press called him the wickedest man in the world. He embraced the title. He signed letters as the Great Beast 666. He was expelled from France for conducting rituals that the French government considered dangerous to public morality. He was banned from Italy. He was feared, ridiculed, and eventually impoverished, dying in 1947 in a boarding house in Hastings with almost nothing left of the fortune he had inherited as a young man. None of that diminished his...
So one of his, sorry about this, I tried to cut it off properly here, guys. I'm still learning. I'm just doing it with the phone. One of his famous sayings is, the eye of Horus is, what was it? The eye of Horus is far sweeter than the mouth of Isis. Now think about that for a minute, and if you want, put in the comments what you think the eye of Horus is.
To Jimmy Page, if anything, it amplified it. Page discovered Crowley in his early teenage years, when he found a copy of one of Crowley's books in a second-hand shop and read it in a single sitting. What he found was not Satanism, not devil worship, not the cartoonish evil that the tabloids had constructed around Crowley's name. What he found was a philosophy of radical self-determination, a systematic approach to understanding the nature of human will, and a body of ceremonial ritual that claimed to offer direct contact with forces beyond ordinary human perception.
Kid.
For a teenager growing up in post-war suburban England, this was not frightening. It was electrifying. Page began collecting everything he could find: books, manuscripts, first editions, letters in Crowley's own handwriting, items of clothing, ceremonial objects, artwork. By the time Led Zeppelin was formed in 1968 and began its almost instantaneous ascent to becoming the biggest rock band on Earth, Page had already accumulated one of the largest...
Hey, Yum Yum, I think you better take somebody and go lock them in their room there.
...collections of Crowley material anywhere in the world. He knew Crowley's writing the way other musicians knew chord progressions. He could quote from the books of the law with the same ease that Robert Plant could quote from Tolkien. And he knew exactly where Crowley had done his most important work. Boleskine House sat on the southeastern shore of Loch Ness, near the small village of Foyers in the Scottish Highlands. It had been built in the late 18th century as a hunting lodge by Archibald Campbell Fraser, and its history was dark before Crowley ever set foot on the property. Local legend held that the house had been constructed on the site of a medieval church that had burned to the ground during a service, killing the entire congregation inside. The ruins of that church lay directly beneath Boleskin's foundations. The graveyard surrounding the site was older than the house itself, and locals had shunned the property for generations, claiming that something about the land itself was wrong in a way that could not be easily explained. Crowley purchased Boleskine in 1899 at the age of 23, paying twice its market value to acquire it quickly. He had been searching for exactly this kind of location for a specific purpose.
So he paid double what the place is worth just so he could snag it up real quick. Isn't that, yeah, Jimmy Page, man. He was a deviant, that man. He really was, you know, as they all were, really.
Obtained a copy of a medieval grimoire called the Book of Abramelin, which described one of the most ambitious and dangerous rituals in the entire history of ceremonial magic.
Yeah.
The ritual was called the Sacred Magic of Abramelin the Mage, and it required a minimum of 6 months of intensive preparation, including complete celibacy, complete abstinence from alcohol, and complete isolation from ordinary life. The goal of the ritual was to make contact with the magician's holy guardian angel, a spiritual entity that would then provide the magician with ultimate self-knowledge and the ability to command demonic forces.
Well, it looks like I'm not going to be summoning any demons here soon.
Reach the angel, one first had to summon and bind the 12 kings and dukes of hell. The ritual required a specific architectural setup, a room with a door opening to the north, and outside that door, a terrace covered in fine river sand where the summoned spirits would be instructed to congregate. Boleskine had exactly this configuration.
Hey, Fozy.
Crowley moved in, began his preparation.
Yeah, all that Kabbalah, you know it, 100%. And the ones that aren't work for them, you know, or they're the Masonic. Anyways, this is about Jimmy Page, but it all does tie together, doesn't it?
And documented the experience in his autobiography, The Confessions of Aleister Crowley, with a level of detail that suggested he believed every word of what he was writing. He described the atmosphere around the house changing as the ritual progressed. He described shadows gathering at the edges of rooms. He described his housekeeper, a man named Hugh Gillies, experiencing a series of devastating personal tragedies during the period of the ritual, including the sudden and unexplained deaths of 2 of his children.
Wow.
He described a local butcher who went temporarily insane and nearly killed 2 customers, apparently for no reason. He described a workman who went mad. Then, before the ritual was complete, before the demons that had been summoned could be formally dismissed, Crowley received a message summoning him urgently to Paris on business connect.
Oh, that's right. Oh, here it's starting to get juicy.
The Golden Dawn, the esoteric society he had recently joined. He left immediately. He never returned to finish the ritual. The spirits he had summoned, according to his own account and to the beliefs of subsequent occultists who studied the case, were never properly dismissed. They remained at Boleskine, unbound and uncontrolled. Crowley sold the house in 1918, financially ruined by decades of excess and extravagance. The property passed through several owners over the following decades, and the pattern...
That was strictly for non-ritual uses only, so had to do it. But yeah, you're right. We're not summoning demons tonight. Anyways, back to the class. Listen, class, don't pay attention. Don't worry about the teacher. Worry about the lessons here. Let's go.
Misfortune continued in a way that even skeptics found difficult to entirely dismiss. A subsequent owner commissioned Hollywood actor George Raft to sell shares in a pig farm allegedly built on the grounds. The farm did not exist.
A pig farm.
The scheme collapsed in scandal. Then, in 1960, the owner at the time, a man named Major Edward Grant, walked into the bedroom that had formerly been used by Crowley for his rituals, placed a shotgun against his head, and pulled the trigger. He was found dead in the room the following morning.
Be very wary of any man who owns a pig farm.
The married couple moved in shortly after Grant's death. Within a month, the husband had walked out, leaving his blind wife alone in the house, unable to see, unable to understand why he had gone. Wow. She was found wandering the property by neighbors who had come to investigate. Nobody could explain why the husband had left, and he never offered any reason. By 1969,
maybe she was a nag.
Was standing empty in a state of advanced decay, with a reputation.
Maybe she was a nag.
Poisonous that virtually nobody in the surrounding area would go near.
What's up, Jasper?
Then an experimental filmmaker named Kenneth Anger, who had been a devoted student of Crowley's work for most of his adult life, heard that the property was available and rented it for a few months while he pursued projects in Scotland. Jimmy Page heard that Kenneth Anger had been at Boleskine, and he made a decision.
So Kenneth Anger also goes back to Laurel Canyon. One of the actors in the Lucifer's Rising movie was Bobby Beausoleil, and he was one of the Manson family members.
1970, with the revenues from Led Zeppelin's first 2 albums generating money on a scale that Page had never imagined possible.
Oh, yeah.
He purchased Boleskine House. He paid for it outright. He knew everything about its history. He had read Crowley's own accounts of what had happened there.
Hit the like button, guys.
Previous owners had experienced.
Come on.
He bought it anyway. He bought it because of all of that, not in spite of it. Page later told Led Zeppelin archivist Howard Milet that the house was in such a state of decay that nobody wanted it. He described it as an interesting house, a perfect place to go when one starts getting wound up by the clock. He was more candid in a 1972 interview with Disc and Music Echo, the British music publication, where he stated directly, "My house used to belong to Aleister Crowley. I knew that when I moved in.
Yeah.
Magic is very important if people can go through it. I think Crowley's completely relevant to today. We're still seeking for truth."
Yeah, no, that's very true. Aleister Crowley single-handedly shaped pop culture of our generation easily. The last 60 to 100 years, that guy's, he's influenced. It's just incredible, really. Not in a good way.
Page commissioned a program of restoration to return the house to approximately the condition it had been in during Crowley's ownership. He hired an artist named Charles Pace to paint murals on the interior walls. Murals based specifically on the decorations that had been in Crowley's Abbey of Thelema in Sicily, which had been discovered by Kenneth Anger in 1955. He acquired 7 chairs from the Café Royal in London, each of which had belonged to a famous historical figure and carried a nameplate with that person's name. One of the chairs had belonged to Aleister Crowley. Page placed Crowley's chair permanently at the head of the dining table. But then something started happening that nobody had anticipated, or at least that nobody had anticipated happening quite so consistently. Page's friend Malcolm Dent, a man described universally as a complete skeptic with no interest in the occult whatsoever, was appointed caretaker of the property and moved in to oversee the restoration. He would live there for nearly 20 years, raise his family there, and by the time he left, he would be one of the most reliable sources for what happened inside Boleskine House during Page's ownership. Dent described doors slamming open and shut throughout the night, consistently, on still evenings when there was no wind. He described rugs and carpets being found rolled up against the walls in rooms that had been empty and locked.
Oh, okay.
He described furniture moving. He described Crowley's chair at the dining table being repeatedly switched, with the chair belonging to Marie Lloyd, despite the fact that nobody in the household had moved it. This happened so frequently and so inexplicably that Dent investigated and eventually discovered that a restorer who had worked on the chairs had accidentally switched the nameplates of the two famous people, meaning that what everyone believed was Crowley's chair was actually Marie Lloyd's. The correct chair, unknowingly, had been moving itself to the head of the table. A female friend who stayed as a guest at Boleskine woke in the middle of the night screaming that she was being attacked by some kind of devil. Dent himself was woken one night by what he described as a wild animal snorting and clawing at his bedroom door. He lay in the dark, too afraid to open the door.
How's it going, T-Dot? You're late for class. Today we're just doing Jimmy Page Boleskine House, and it's a spooky little house that he bought that was owned by Aleister Crowley, the wickedest man in the world. So let's continue. Welcome to the stream, buddy. Thanks for popping in.
Morning. When daylight came and he finally opened the door, there was nothing in the corridor. No animal, no marks, no explanation. Dent described the outdoor terrace at dusk as being filled with shifting shadows. Shapes that moved in ways that did not correspond
and they
to
looked
the
like
movement
shadows
of trees or clouds or any identifiable natural source of shadow.
And they talked to shadows.
He was unambiguous about his conclusion. Whatever was there, he said, was pure evil. Jimmy Page spent approximately 6 weeks at Boleskine over the entire 22 years he owned it. The occult was not, for Page, a hobby or an affectation or a way of marketing Led Zeppelin as something dangerous and mysterious.
He was into it.
It was a genuine, serious, long-term intellectual and spiritual practice that ran through every aspect of his life with a consistency that few observers fully appreciated at the time. The evidence for this was everywhere in Led Zeppelin's work once you knew what to look for.
Exactly.
The vinyl pressings of Led Zeppelin III contained the phrase, "Do what thou wilt," carved into the groove near the center label. This was Crowley's supreme law, the foundational principle of Thelema.
Yeah.
Most listeners never noticed it.
So have you noticed even Jay-Z has a shirt that says, "Do what thou wilt." And just off the top of my head, I can't pick it out, but there's even a couple songs, "Do what you want," or that kind of thing. That's what it's based on, is "Do what thou wilt." So whenever you hear like a "what you gonna do what you want" sort of thing, that's what they're referring to, most likely.
Id tended to assume it was a joke or a marketing gimmick. It was neither. The fourth Led Zeppelin album, released in November 1971, contained no title, no band name, no record label identification anywhere on the cover or sleeve. Nothing except 4 symbols, one for each member of the band.
Yep.
Page's symbol, which became colloquially known as Zoso, had roots in a 16th century alchemical grimoire. John Bonham's symbol was 3 overlapping circles, created, according to Bonham, by placing a beer glass on a table and drawing around it. Robert Plant's symbol was a feather inside a circle.
Yeah.
John
right.
Paul Jones chose an existing occult sigil from Crowley's own published work. These were not chosen at random.
No.
They were, in Page's framework, sigils.
Yeah.
Magical symbols.
So they put intention on it and everything. And the lore of Led Zeppelin is that only 3 of them did the Robert Johnson deal. That's why John Paul Jones was not invited to the so-called, like, the first reunion that they had, where it was just Page and Plant. But he did play in the last reunion concert when they did it with Bonham. But yeah, the that deal that's made with the devil is it's very prevalent in Led Zeppelin lore. Robert Plant lost his wife and his son, and John Bonham died after, I guess it was 10 years or something of playing with the band, and the band chose not to replace him. So yeah, pretty heavy stuff. Let's continue, guys.
Intended to carry specific energies and intentions. The choice to remove all ordinary identifying information from the album sleeve was deliberate. Page wanted the music to exist without the apparatus of commercial branding surrounding it, as a pure magical object. The hermit.
Oh, that's right too. The famous backwards messaging in Stairway to Heaven is there. I've heard it myself, and maybe I'll try and pull it up. Who knows? But it's there, so it's a trip. My sweet Satan, 666. My sweet Satan. Yep, that's what they say.
On the cover of Led Zeppelin IV, an old man carrying a staff and lantern on a mountainside was drawn from the tarot, specifically from the card called the Hermit, the 9th major arcana, associated with introspection, spiritual guidance, and the withdrawal from ordinary life in pursuit of inner illumination. Page appeared as this character in the fantasy sequence filmed at Boleskine for the 1976 concert film The Song Remains the Same, climbing the mountainside in the darkness, holding his lantern alone. In October 1973, Page opened a specialist bookshop in Kensington High Street in London. He named it the Equinox Booksellers and Publishers, after Crowley's own journal of the same name. His stated intention was to create the kind of resource that had never existed in London before, a serious collection of rare and important occult literature available to genuine students. He told interviewers, "There was not one bookshop in London with a good collection of occult books, and I was so pissed off at not being able to get the books I wanted. The shop was never designed to make money. It was designed to serve a purpose that Page considered genuinely important." It published careful facsimile reproductions of Crowley's most significant works, including a meticulous recreation of the 1904 edition of the Goetia, with the same delicate camel hair paper cover as the original. Page closed the shop in 1978. The relationship between Jimmy Page and the filmmaker Kenneth Anger was one of the most destructive personal connections of Page's life.
Oh, yeah.
The two men first encountered each other at a Sotheby's auction in London in 1972, where both were bidding on a manuscript written by Aleister Crowley. Page outbid Anger, but the shared obsession formed the basis for an intense connection between them. Anger was working on a film he called Lucifer Rising.
Yes.
He approached Page to compose the soundtrack. Page agreed. The production had already been troubled before Page entered the picture. Anger's original lead actor had been Bobby Beausoleil, a musician from Charles Manson's circle, who had quit abruptly, stolen film equipment from Anger, and been convicted of murder within a year. Anger had reportedly constructed a curse against him.
Yeah.
He appeared to believe the subsequent life sentence was a consequence of that curse. Page committed to deliver 40 minutes of music for Lucifer Rising. The collaboration collapsed after several years. Anger told the press that Page was a miser in the most unpleasant sense, and publicly accused him of what he called having an affair with the white lady.
I've spray painted those symbols myself, you know, and that's what the interesting thing about rock and roll and magic is it's you know, the spreading of the philosophy. And so here you get young kids like myself spray painting, you know, serious magic sigils all over the place, not knowing what the fuck I'm doing. You know what I mean? So yeah, according to that, I've been chanting spells and drawing sigils since I was 8 years old. Fuck, man. Anyways, let's continue, guys.
Direct reference to Page's heroin addiction.
Oh, yeah.
Anger then pronounced a public curse on Page. Page never commented publicly on the curse. There is no way to discuss Boleskine House and Jimmy Page's years of occult practice without acknowledging what happened to Led Zeppelin in the years that followed the purchase.
Exactly.
The question of whether these events were connected to Page's activities, or whether they were simply the accumulated misfortunes of 4 men living recklessly at the center of the most dangerous entertainment
you think they're yum? Fuck.
Industry on Earth, is one that each person must answer for themselves. What cannot be disputed are the events themselves. In August 1975, Robert Plant and his wife Maureen were on vacation in Rhodes, Greece, when the car they were traveling in crashed into a ditch and hit a tree. Maureen's injuries were severe enough to require emergency blood transfusions on the island. Plant's right leg was shattered. His ankle was broken. His elbow was broken. He was unable to walk normally for a year and was confined to a wheelchair for months. Jimmy Page, who had also been vacationing in the Mediterranean, traveled to Sicily immediately after the accident to visit the ruins of Crowley's Abbey of Thelema. In July 1977, during what should have been Led Zeppelin's triumphant return to America after a 2-year absence, everything began to fall apart simultaneously. On July 23rd, in Oakland, California, backstage violence involving the band's management resulted in the brutal assault of a promoter's security guard, and in the arrest of John Bonham, manager Peter Grant, tour manager Richard Cole, and security chief John Bindon on misdemeanor assault charges.
Yeah.
The tour manager had to negotiate with police in the hotel lobby to prevent the officers from searching all 50 rooms Led Zeppelin had booked. The 4 men were led out through the service entrance to waiting police cars. The band's future American touring was effectively finished. 2 days later, on July 26th, Robert Plant received a telephone call informing him that his 5-year-old son, Karak, had died in England from a stomach infection. The remaining 7 tour dates were canceled immediately. Plant flew home. He later told Rolling Stone that he had wanted to leave Led Zeppelin entirely. He did not want to be in the band. He wanted to be with his family. The tour that had been meant to re-establish Led Zeppelin as the dominant force in American rock ended not with a triumph, but with a funeral. In September 1980, John Bonham was picked up by a Led Zeppelin assistant to attend rehearsals at Bray Studios outside London for a planned North American tour. During the drive, Bonham asked to stop for breakfast. He drank 4 quadruple vodka screwdrivers, which is 16 shots of vodka, before arriving at rehearsals. He continued drinking heavily throughout the day. When the band stopped working that evening, they went to Jimmy Page's home, the Old Mill House in Clewer, Windsor. After midnight, Bonham fell asleep. Someone placed him on his side in bed.
Ryan, what's up, bro? We're just watching the Led Zeppelin Boleskine house story where Jimmy Page bought Aleister Crowley's house, and a whole bunch of bad shit started happening to Led Zeppelin. So we're just near the tail end of it. But thanks for popping in, man. Cheers.
The
Hey, Gemma,
afternoon,
what's up?
Led Zeppelin tour manager Benji
How you
Lefebvre
doing?
and John Paul Jones found him unresponsive. He was pronounced dead. He was 32 years.
This guy, John Bonham, was my favorite drummer of all rock drummers. This was the guy that made me want to play drums when I was a kid, and I did for a number of years. I even took some private lessons. But yeah, John Bonham was my guy as far as drummers went. I still, the drum fill he does on his bass drum on Good Times Bad Times, he was watching Carmen Appice, this other drummer. He drummed for Rod Stewart, and Appice had double bass drums, and John Bonham did this triplet fill on his bass drum. So he's doing it with his foot, with his single foot, and most drummers need two drums to do it, and he did it with his foot, and it's on Good Times Bad Times. It's right in the beginning. I think it's the first drum break, and it's just amazing. The guy's incredible.
The inquest found that in the space of approximately 24
Sorry to hear that, dear. This sucks.
hours,
No
John
wonder,
Bonham
though.
had consumed
Sorry.
approximately 40 shots of vodka. He had vomited in his sleep and inhaled it. 2 months later, the remaining members of Led Zeppelin issued a brief statement announcing that they could not continue as a band without their dear friend. Led Zeppelin was over. Page sold Boleskine House in 1992 for $250,000. He had spent, in 22 years of ownership, approximately 6 weeks inside the building. In 2015, a fire broke out at Boleskine. The cause was never officially determined. Large portions of the structure were destroyed. In December 2019, a week after new owners had purchased the property, fire broke out again. That fire was determined to be arson. The house has been undergoing restoration ever since. Jimmy Page has given many interviews over the decades, and
Come on now, kids. I know, but just come on.
virtually all of them declined to discuss his occult practices in detail. In 1975, speaking to Rolling Stone, he said about Boleskine, "Yes, it was owned by Aleister Crowley. But there were 2 or 3 owners before Crowley moved into it. It was also a church that was burned to the ground with the congregation in it.
Wow.
That's the site of the house. The bad vibes were already there. A man was beheaded there.
Oh, nice.
And sometimes you can hear his head rolling down. Of course, after Crowley, there have been suicides, people carted off to mental hospitals. In 1978, Page said, "I feel Aleister Crowley is a misunderstood genius of the 20th century.
Hey,
I don't agree with everything, but
past
I
your
find a lot
bedtime.
of it relevant. My stuff
it's past some people's bedtime now. Come on, get on it there."
has been quite intensive, but I don't particularly want to go into it because it's a personal thing. The thing is to come to terms with one's free will, discover one's place and what one is. And from that, you can go ahead and do it, and not spend your whole life suppressed and frustrated." What Page was describing was not devil worship, and not the theatrical darkness that tabloids wanted to project onto Led Zeppelin. It was something considerably more unsettling in its way, because it was serious. Page had spent 30 years, from his teenage bedroom in Epsom to the peak of rock and roll, building a genuine intellectual and spiritual framework based on Crowley's system. He had
Okay, so here's an example. When you're a magician. A magician? What the fuck is that? Magician? What? Like I make? Anyway, when you're a magician, you have a robe, right? So Jimmy Page had that dragon, the dragon pant, satin, the black satin robe, right, for the concerts. And then they have a wand. That was his bow, right? His the bow. And in rituals, you bless north, south, east, and west. And during the concert, he hits the bow and he goes to each four corners of the stadium and points the bow out. So literally during his bow recital, his guitar solo in Dazed and Confused, he's literally casting a spell on the crowd. Literally.
Significant portion of his fortune acquiring the physical objects
Hello.
And locations associated.
Hello, Bridget. How you doing? Ah, what the fuck? Dang. Okay, let's go here. There we go. Boom. Don't panic. Nice
and locations associated with it. He had embedded the language and symbols of that system into the work of the most commercially successful rock band the world had ever seen.
I'm in class right
Whether
now.
the events that followed, the accident...
This is history, River. This is history. Take notes, write a little report, you pass.
Roads, the disaster in Oakland, the death of Plant's son, the death of Bonham, the dissolution of the band, were connected to anything Page had done at Boleskine is a question that cannot be answered. What can be said is this: Jimmy Page pursued his obsession with a consistency and seriousness that almost nobody around him fully understood. He kept it almost entirely private, hidden behind the enormous noise of Led Zeppelin's public existence, surfacing only in symbols and in decisions that most people never looked at closely enough to read. The house on Loch Ness.
Well, did you enjoy this? Because anything like this is history. Yeah, anything about nostalgic culture, pop culture, is history. So you can, you can learn to love it, right? For kid's sake, gee willikers, kid. All you got to do is listen to one of these videos and write out a little essay, and there you go, you pass. It's not rocket science. Come on.
Clearest expression of who Jimmy Page actually was beneath the guitar and the fame. He found it in decay. He bought it knowing everything that had happened inside it. He restored it to look the way it had looked when Crowley lived there. He placed a caretaker inside it who spent 20 years watching things move on their own. And then he stayed away, visiting only a handful of times in 22 years. Malcolm Dent, the caretaker who spent 2 decades inside Boleskine House and claimed to be a complete skeptic when he arrived, was asked in one of his later interviews what he made of all the years he had spent there.
I'm a believer.
All the things he had seen and heard
I'm
that he
a
could
believer.
not explain. He paused for a long time before answering. Then he said, whatever was there was pure evil. Jimmy Page never contradicted him. If this story surprised you, there's more where this came from. Every episode on this channel is a real, documented Led Zeppelin story that history buried.
Interesting. So yeah, that was kind of fun. So let's just try this though here.
Look here. This isn't just an ordinary denture, but the globally popular flexible smart custom denture
How's it going,
kit.
South Buchanan?
It's incredibly easy to use. Just soak it in hot water for 1 minute. It instantly
There we go. Stop it. Yeah, say a prayer. Oh yeah. Yeah, I better just stop it just to break any kind of spell or anything like that. Who knows? You always have to be aware of this kind of sonic stuff, especially when, you know, I do have the audio out. So I want, you know, I'm very serious about this. So this is something that if you feel you shouldn't listen to it, that's fine. But maybe you might want to say a prayer afterwards. Just saying. Anyways, I'll continue. Yeah, that's true there, kiddo. What, are you kidding me? We're gonna put this in your songs. We're gonna put all kinds of stuff like this in your songs, but we're gonna, like, you know, make it fun. We're not gonna be dancing to Satan, I'll tell you that. We'll sell bunnies or something. Who knows? You'll buy more records. Just fucking around. Yeah, it's pretty wild shit though. This back masking. It's been yeah, right. It's been used in music for forever. The other thing, which is interesting and you know, relevant, is Aleister Crowley taught, and this is one of the teachings in, you know, a lot of these different practices, is to learn to speak backwards and count backwards, read backwards. So Anyways, I think that's probably enough. We kind of get the point. Does anyone need to hear any more? I don't think so. I think I made my point. You know, it is kind of creepy, right? So let's see. What do we want to do here? Oh, I don't know. I think I'll just call it a night. Thanks, guys. Thanks for popping in. I had a little bit of fun, and yeah, good little history lesson. I thought that was fun. You know, I'll get it. I'll get the production better, but you know, it is what it is. Thanks again, and have a pleasant tomorrow. How do I do this?